You're tuning into the Real Estate Diversification Podcast, hosted by trusted and experienced real estate attorneys who are also seasoned real estate investors themselves. Are you ready to explore unique real estate investing opportunities? Ready to learn about emerging trends and new ideas? Your hosts will help you understand the practical and legal complexities of a myriad of real estate investments so that you can maximize your potential and achieve financial freedom. Now, listen in and get ready to learn.
Good morning, Red Podcast Nation. Ferd Niemann here again today. Actually, today is our the first episode of the Red Podcast, Real Estate Diversification Podcast. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. I'm going to be one of your hosts here at Kansas City Real Estate Law. I'm also going to have several of my colleagues, Jonathan Gilmore, who's got a lot of experience with land use development, lots of single family business, multifamily. Doug Rainey. Doug's got a lot of experience in the oil and gas business, done a lot of mobile home park transactions. He's done single family development as a developer, also done a lot of legal work in that realm. Jay Heck. Jay has been an attorney for several decades, done a ton of work on office stuff, easements, leases, corporate stuff. He worked for a large national company, a couple of them actually, for a long time, and has just done a lot of cell towers and all kinds of other stuff. So he's got a ton of experience. Hunter Woodhart's another attorney here. He's going to tell you about a lot of the zoning stuff he's worked on, RV parks. He's done some subsidized housing like Section 42, low-income housing tax credits, a number of things like that. Me, Ferd, I've done a lot of different things over my career. You'll hear about them in the episodes to come. Done single family, duplexes, subject to. I've done flips, multifamily, done a lot of tax incentives on mixed use projects. As a financial analyst, I also own and operate over 1,000 sites of mobile home parks, which put me into one of the top 100 in the country as far as size there. Got investments in some storage facilities as well. Done a little bit RV. Some startup businesses, some non-real estate stuff as well, like help raise money and invest in solar energy business, a medical device company, also a restaurant chain. So got a pretty good mix of experience and skills on our team. And the purpose of the Real Estate Diversification Podcast is really to show you, the listeners, how to invest in a cornucopia of real estate investment topics. Some of these are going to be more your blocking and tackling, like single family flips, duplexes, multifamily, things of that sort. And then a little more complicated, we get into like land use issues like residential development, some tax incentives, maybe like on triple net retail, for example. And then more your unique stuff, Airbnb, senior living, bed and breakfast, glamping, quarries, tree farms, wind farms, solar farms, all kinds of farms, right? And then lots of other different areas that are kind of quasi real estate, like cell tower leases, racetracks, marinas, laundromats, gas stations, and auto auction. And of course, things like office, industrial, RV parks, mobile home parks, etc. So we're going to go through a whole bunch of topics. It should be interesting. Look forward to your feedback. If you want us to show you guys some stuff on a particular topic, just go to the website there and comment in. We're also going to be interviewing some of our contacts, some of whom are investors of ours, clients of ours, friends of ours, some of whom we may not know yet, who are in some of these different food groups, restaurateurs, for example, home flippers, multifamily developers, and the like. So lots in store for Real Estate Diversification Podcast. And in general, when you invest in real estate, I like to think you do it for one of a few reasons. And you've probably heard people say cash is king. You'll hear people like Grant Cardone say cash flow is king. And you'll have other people talk about, net worth or asset value or net asset value being king, or queen, whatever meets your fancy there. Which is right? Well, depends on you, depends on your investment goals. And some of those may be more appropriate in different stages of your career. For example, your first project's probably not going to be buying a shopping mall. Your first project's probably not going to be buying billboards. We'll talk about those topics, but you may be better off starting in some of the low cost options for real estate. And that'll be the next episode, is low cost entry. We'll cover things like house hacking, wholesaling, brokerage, being an LP, some of those more preliminary steps. That's kind of how I got my career started, doing some subject to the existing mortgage financings, lease options, things like that. And then we'll move into things like single family. We'll talk about the pros and cons of the tax treatment or workload and or cash needs on flips or on buy and hold rentals, things like that. We'll even talk about build for rent. And then we'll get into these other topics. So I think of real estate and I think about the calculation for internal rate of return, which is often one of the most cited and sometimes most misunderstood investment metrics. And when I learned how to be a financial analyst in commercial real estate, I was a tax incentive analyst at Jackson County in Kansas City, Missouri, and I looked at dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of projects of all food groups. And I really wanted to dive into it. And back then, there wasn't a lot of podcasts. This is back 08, 09. There wasn't a lot of content online for free. And I knew how to use Microsoft Excel. I could hit equals, IRR, open parent, grab the data, close parent, hit enter. It would tell me the IRR of an investment, but I didn't really understand it as well. So I had to go dig deeper. And the three components that I really think make a lot of the magic happen on that formula are really the three reasons that people invest in real estate. And that formula, typically you have a cash outflow at the beginning where you invest money in period 0 or period 1. And then you have a series of positive or negative cash flows, which shows the influx of cash and then the distribution of cash on a time adjusted manner. So obviously $1 today is more valuable than $1 tomorrow if you can invest it positively due to the time value money. Well, those three ways you can make money that are encapsulated in an internal rate of return, more so than say a cash on cash return or even an equity multiple or some other ROI metrics, would be cash flow, appreciation, which is increase in value, probably mispronounced from appreciation, but I like to say appreciation because it's more clear from distinct from depreciation, and then principal pay down or equity, which is great on rental real estate, whether it's single family, multifamily, or retail, anything rental real estate that has an amortizing loan, meaning a loan that's not just interest only or not deferred payments, but a loan that has a principal component in the periodic, typically monthly payment. That would lead to your tenants paying down your mortgage. And that is how you can create a spread for when you eventually refinance or sell the property. In a typical discounted cash flow analysis, you're going to have a reversion value or a quote hypothetical sale value at the end of year 10, typically capitalizing the year 10, or sometimes the proper way I used to do it was the year 11 net operating income. I tend to like to buy on the trailing 12 financials and sell on the pro forma next 12 financials. That's all part of the negotiation of real estate. But in those metrics, so when I used to teach my appraisers, I used to be the county appraiser at Jackson County. I had about a 65, 70 person staff, about a $6 to $8 million operating budget, depending on the year. And I oversaw, 250,000 parcels of real estate here in a good team in Kansas City market. And I tried to teach the appraisers, particularly the commercial appraisers, how these metrics worked for valuation. And I gave the hypothetical 3 investors. And I said, which of these investors is smart or dumb, or which one's crazy? And I said, let's look at the single family business, which I was doing at the time. I had single family houses, and I'd make, $1,200 a month gross. I'd have $200 a month expenses. I got $1,000 of net operating income. But then if I had a mortgage payment of $700, debt service, principal, interest, taxes, insurance through the bank, 1,000 minus 700 was 300 of cash flow. Or you can argue even free cash flow. I didn't have any investors to pay or any other ancillary obligations to put. So you can reinvest free cash flow, or you can take cash flow out. You can pay down your note. You can do a number of things with your cash flow. So that the purpose for me was generally, it was a cash flow investment. My loans on my properties had a 30-year amortization. Well, 30-year amortization is a really slow principal pay down. The benefit is you have more cash flow, but compared to a 20-year amortization, but the downside is you're not paying down the principals much. But that investment was generally for the consistent cash flow. Now, in theory, I would make it, and I was able to actually sell these homes at a higher price at the end of the movie. But there is some NOI growth in single family, for example, but some of that is subject to market forces. And we're just, there is some time value money. Rents seem to go up, as especially in today's world in 2023 with inflation. Rents are really going through the roof, no pun intended. So that was a cash flow play. I didn't pay down that much principal. I didn't have that much appreciation. So the 3 legs of the stool of cash flow, appreciation, and principal pay down, I really was a cash flow play. Well, then I looked at this building in Midtown Kansas City. It was the IRS like regional headquarters. It's a massive facility, like 3 million square feet. And it's a government-backed lease, so the rent is nearly guaranteed. Well, that building doesn't have a lot of secondary use. It's generally, I would consider, functionally obsolete if and when the IRS leaves, because it's so big and it's just big floor plan. Not a lot of prospective tenants can take it. So the landlord, you're not really going to have a big appreciation play, and you're probably don't have a lot of cash flow. And why is that? Well, the reason is because it's a government lease. Anybody almost would want to be the landlord because it's safe. So people who will bid the job for a build to suit will agree to create less margin, basically less dollars per square foot of rent. So it's a big number. I mean, it's a $50 million project. But relative to the percentage, it's not a big cash flow play. It's not a big appreciation play. So what's the play? Well, it's a 15-year government lease. At the end of 15 years, the building and the land are paid off free and clear. So it's a net worth play. You're building lots of equity that the IRS is paying. And at the end of the movie, if they move out, you get this big building. It's probably not worth the 50 million you spent. Maybe the building's only worth 20 or 30. Maybe you got to turn it into storage or turn it into some secondary retail use, maybe flex industrial. But worst case scenario, you scrape the building and you got to pay a big number for that. But then you have the land. And so the large chunk of land in a desirable area right across the street from Kansas City's beautiful Union Station and World War I Memorial. And as such, you have free and clear land and building, or land after building and scraping a building. So that's more of the appreciation play. That's more of the principal pay down play. So what's the appreciation play? Some of these are speculative. Like if I buy 50 acres of farm ground 5 miles outside of town, it's probably not going to cash flow. It's probably going to cash flow negative. It barely can cover the interest. And it's really not going to have much principal pay down because I'm just choking on the payment, frankly, and trying to cover the interest. And I'm speculating why? For the future value, the appreciation. Typically, if you're buying land, you should buy by the acre, sell by the lot if you're doing single family, or even better if you're doing something like retail, sell by the foot. Now, obviously there's infrastructure costs, there's tap fees, there's a location component, and then there's a lot of wait, where you're trying to wait for the time to get there. But that would be the appreciation model. Some investments have all of the above. I own a lot of mobile home parks. I'm really a big fan of that. Mobile home park, if you buy a value add park, you probably don't have a ton of cash flow, but you have some cash flow, but really you have some principal pay down because you're paying your advertising mortgage, typically a 20 or 25-year mortgage. But then the real play is you can have appreciation because you can increase the value. You can increase the value by increasing top line revenue, ideally decreasing expenses, and then infilling vacant lots, so increasing basically the unit count. So you can have a cornucopia of all three, but you really, in that example, you're probably going for more of the appreciation. But you could do a combination depending on if you're buying a value add property or more of a core property that's kind of stable and almost a coupon clip. Like I used to do triple net retail, don't really do much anymore. But if we used to own a shopping center in Topeka, Kansas, and we had CVS as a tenant. It wasn't a high cash flow play, wasn't a huge valuation play, wasn't a huge principal pay down play, but it was kind of all three. And it was a pretty steady Eddie. And it was, in some respects, you'd say risk-free or very low risk because CVS has really high credit. So it was just coupon clip with little bumps in the rent. Typically on a triple net lease, you're going to have fixed rent periods, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years. In the example of the CVS, in this case, they had a 55-year lease and they could just keep renewing in 5-year increments. They've been there for a long time, which I actually didn't like. We wanted them to move out. We offered them to move out because they were at a $7 lease. The market was 10. We wanted to get them to move out. We could put somebody else in there 10, new NOI. And we'd have some re-tenanting, tenant finish, retrofitting to get the new person in there. We'd have some dead rent as far as vacant rent, but then also typically in triple net, the triple nets are taxes, insurance, and common area maintenance. CVS had, I think, 30,000 feet of a 150,000 foot shopping center. Well, they paid about a fifth of all those triple nets. Well, if they go vacant, we are covering 20%, a fifth of all of those expenses. And it's not like we can spend less on the property taxes. Maybe you can via appeal, but not in the front run. We're not like we can spend less on pushing the snow or, a lot of these insuring the building, et cetera. You may have to pay more because there's a vacancy on the insurance. So triple net has some of those components. So this is the kind of stuff that we're going to cover in these episodes. We're going to talk about RV parks, the way you can increase revenue and a number of different metrics compared to a lot of other investments. We're going to talk about, the cap rate play and stability in multifamily. We're going to talk about investing in office provisions. And also if you're a tenant or landlord, key office lease provisions that you're going to want to look at. We're going to look at storage and different types of storage, residential development from ground up, and a number of other things. We're going to look at the different components of leases in restaurants and different valuation metrics, how to look for an oil and gas deal, and then a number of unique things like Airbnb. Well, there's a lot of zoning or permitting challenges of Airbnb. A lot of Airbnbs are not legally supposed to be there, right? But they are. And then we can look at industrial and maybe the cost of drayage or other shipping costs that are important. Here in Kansas City, there's Burlington Northern. Santa Fe has a large intermodal, has driven a ton of industrial development. Well, that in turn leads to more ancillary factories nearby. That leads to more rooftops, leads to more jobs, lots of economic development. Well, a lot of those projects are subsidized by tax incentives, which typically would redirect generally an incremental or new amount of property tax or sales tax. There are other jobs-based tax credits depending on the state and jurisdiction. But we'll look at that. We'll look at the different types of, hotel, motel, for example, and how the expense ratio is typically going to be higher because it's very hospitality based. And then we'll see some of how maybe RV parks are more similar to hotel than say mobile home parks, which are generally, especially if it's a land lease community where you don't own the homes, it's going to be a lower expense ratio and lower maintenance obligation than some of these other asset classes, like a typical multifamily, for example. So we'll just keep going through these different episodes. We're going to look at, some of the land use and title issues that come with if you're looking at a cell tower lease or a solar farm. We're going to look at marinas, and obviously marinas, they ain't building that many more of them, right? As I sit, I got a parking lot next to me. There's not going to be a marina here, right? And then we can look at some of the environmental issues as you look at gas stations, for example, or laundromats. That's another one. And we'll talk about it. And some of the stuff we won't talk about in every podcast episode, but we'll have on our website, rediversificationpodcast.com. We'll have links to blogs. We'll do a blog post on phase one environmental and why you need it. We'll talk about some of the unique tax advantages with gas stations or with mobile home parks, and then how you can use cost segregation studies, bonus depreciation. If you're a real estate professional, how you can legally pay a lesser income tax liability. We're going to look at other utility companies, breweries, strip malls, billboards. Billboards have really changed over years. I actually was close to buying a couple of billboards and then decided not to because the market's changed a lot. You go now down the highway, you see these green signs, say gas next right, hotel next right, food next right. Well, those things are great for the traveler, but they make it harder for the billboard owner. And in a lot of places, billboards are persona non grata, where like cities do not like these things. They think they're ugly, just like old pole signs. Now they want these big, beautiful monument signs. So a lot of real estate has the blocking and tackling would typically include contracts, leases, preliminary title commitment, survey review. You got closing docs like bill of sale, assignment of leases, closing instruction letter. You may have bank docs like deed, promissory note, mortgage. You may have assumption paperwork, so if you're doing a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac assumption. Some properties have other additional riders on those, or rent control or tax incentive restrictions. And then zoning, permitting, development approvals are really important in particular commercial real estate. And then in particular, there's also some unique real estate. Like if you want a quarry, where can you put a quarry? One, probably where the earth makes sense, where what's underneath the soil, but also where the city will allow it from a zoning perspective. So all these topics we're going to cover and more. Again, I got a good team here of lawyers who are also investors, and we just have a passion for real estate. And the Real Estate Diversification Podcast is designed to help you focus on which of those three, whether it's cash flow, principal payment, or appreciation, which of those three investment goals fit most with you. But then also based on how much do you want to work, how much risk do you want to take, how much capital do you have? Are you going to be a sweat equity guy, a limited partner? We can talk about syndications. A number of things as we kind of go through the gamut here of all these topics. We're going to look for emerging trends. If I'd have had a crystal ball 10 years ago, I'd be a lot richer than I am now. But 10 years ago, we may have seen things like self-storage, mobile home parks, RV parks, Airbnb being the next echelon. But then we saw things like COVID. Well, COVID showed us we needed a lot more industrial. Well, then we need a number of ancillary services like that. So what's the next big thing? I don't know. We'll explore. I've got some of my own opinions. We'll explore some more, but ideally we can help you find the next emerging trend for investments, and or something that just fits your lifestyle. Like maybe you want to be the guy that owns those little ice kiosks in parking lots, or maybe you want to own a little coffee shop on a pad site in a small parking lot. That's kind of a quasi work, quasi passive investment. And maybe you want to do something that's extremely active, like flipping a house. Maybe you want to be more of a advisor consultant on somebody's doing glamping, or any one of a number of other kind of new trends that are maybe not as tried and true as retail, but maybe not as at risk in the modern economy in the COVID world, where retail isn't as exciting to me as it was 3 years ago. Office is not as exciting to me as 3 years ago. Hotel. But then again, if the pricing for such is adjusted, well, maybe the risk-adjusted return is still there for retail. We still need service retail. I can't do my haircut at home. I can't do medical at home. Sometimes I got to go to the grocery store. Amazon will ship me, deodorant, toothpaste, and razor blades. But at current, they're not shipping me ribeye steaks and fruit. I don't eat that much fruit, I'll be honest. But they're not shipping a lot of the regular goods. One day at the inside of the grocery store, the center, I anticipate will be gone. I think it's going to be coming from factories and coming to your doorstep. You're going to see the outside four walls. You're going to see the bakery, deli, the eyeglass place, the coffee shop place, the prepared foods, other meat cuts, and probably liquor and cigarettes, because they're not really shipping that stuff. So we'll see what the emerging trend is as we live through this game together. But look forward to working with you guys on the Red Podcast. Again, my name is Ferd Niemann. You can find us at rediversificationpodcast.com. Till next time, thanks, God bless, and invest wisely.
Thanks for listening to the Real Estate Diversification Podcast. Did you enjoy the episode? Visit www.rediversification.com to tune in to more exciting episodes and free information and tools that will help you succeed. Leave us a review and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and our other social media channels at the RED Podcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Missouri Bar Advertising Disclosure. Neither the Supreme Court of Missouri nor the Missouri Bar reviews nor approves certifying organizations or specialist designations. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements.